Can you increase the rent while your tenant is still in their fixed term tenancy contract? Well, the short answer to that is yes, you can increase the rent even if your tenant is still in their current fixed term of their tenancy contract. But there are a few things that are important to know, and a lot of letting agents get this wrong because they don't know the full legal requirement and the correct processes to do this. So landlords, this is what you need to know. First things first, you can actually change anything within reason as long as the tenant agrees to it. So, for an example, if you do want to increase the rent while your tenant is still in the fixed term of their tenancy contract, then you can do so as long as you speak to the tenant, agree it with the tenant, and then get it in writing. Better than that, get a new tenancy contract with the new rent signed by both you and the tenant, because any new tenancy that you start, even with the existing tenancy, even during their fixed term tenancy contract, that new contract will supersede any before it. So first of all, if you do want to increase the rent, just make sure that your tenant agrees to it. Now there's another important thing that you need to know here. You've got to make any changes fair and reasonable for a number of reasons. First of all, the tenant has to be able to afford the rent increase that you're proposing. Second of all, if you want them to agree to a rent increase, then you've got to make it a reasonable and fair rent increase. Now look, everybody has experienced a significant increase in the cost of living. So a lot of landlords are increasing rent, or even worse, a lot of landlords are selling their properties because they can't afford to keep them. By the way, I am running a landlord to landlord property sale service because there are a lot of property investors that will buy properties that are ready tenanted, ready to go, and it earns them rent from day one. So I combine all of those landlords that need to sell but cannot remove their tenants. It's brilliant and it's working well and it's very popular, and it is as it sounds. It's a landlord to landlord property sale service. Now look, if you want to get a valuation of your property for that landlord to landlord sale, then contact me. You can comment below, you can message me through my Facebook page, or you can email me. It's tom@soanegroup.co.uk, or just go to soanegroup.co.uk and contact me that way. One way or another, contact me and we'll start the process of a professional valuation of your property. You can change anything in the tenancy contract as long as the tenant agrees to it. It's got to be fair and reasonable. And if you're thinking of making any other changes to the tenancy contract, you can also do that as well in the same way. As long as the tenant agrees to it, you can change it. But again, just to repeat this, you must make it fair and reasonable. Don't go adding in silly clauses into the contract just because you want the tenant to always wear stripy t-shirts on Tuesday and spotty t-shirts on Thursday. You can't add silly clauses. It will go to court and the judge will just say, no, that's not a reasonable or fair clause. Can't enforce it. So rent increases, that's fine if the tenant agrees to it. Or if there are any other normal parts of a tenancy contract that you need to change, you can do that. A long-term tenant is much better than lots of tenants moving in and moving out of your property. Now, if you also want to find out the proper and correct way to increase the rent, whether your tenant is in contract or out of contract, there are very specific ways of increasing the rent in both scenarios. Then go to my YouTube channel, subscribe while you're there, because I do tons of videos for landlords and property investors, and hopefully you'll be able to keep your property just by making sure that you're getting a fair market value in rent. Bear in mind as well, one last point, your tenant is probably not going to like increasing the rent. No tenant wants to pay more in rent than they're currently paying, in the same way that no landlord wants to pay more for their mortgage payment than they're currently paying. But mortgage rates have gone up, up, up. Landlords are paying through the roof in their mortgage payments nowadays. So in a lot of cases, tenants have to pay more so that the landlord can afford to keep their mortgage payments going. And also, tenants will have to pay more because rents have gone up. Rents have increased. So it's important that we keep the rents fair and reasonable. And I emphasize fair and reasonable. Hopefully that helps. Speak to you all soon. Take care.